So the topic today, everything you consume has an effect on you, whether you like it or not. It's it's something I shared on a post today, which okay, wait. This thing is not working on Facebook. That I shared today that I wanted to talk a little bit about because for some reason, I know we talked about environments yesterday of how if your environment does not look like the way you want it to, sometimes you have to create changes that help you have the environment that you're looking for. Should I ask something? Oh no. Let me see. So that's what we're talking about today, and give me a sec. I do better when I have a board meeting coming up, so I'm only going to be here for until 4. It's 3:28 my time right now, so we're going to do what it does and talk about this. All right. And again, #live if you're catching the live, #replay if you're catching the replay, because then engaging is the best way for you to contribute to the work that I do. So please, 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 please don't feel free to engage and support this creator here. It means a lot to me, and I love having conversations with we don't have to be like-minded, but we have to be thinkers. And that's one thing I encourage. I encourage people to think. Sorry, Facebook, I'm going to wipe this camera. People to think out of the box. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. And the topic today, a lot of people don't think about it, but what you consume and who you surround yourself with is even goes back to what I said yesterday about your environment, right? If your environment does not look like what you want it to look like, that may be because you need to do things differently and you need to set up, like in terms of professionally, you need to set up systems to help you with your growth process, this growth, the sustainability that you're looking for, right? So, who is that? Oh, that ain't my mama. Sorry, I'm making sure it's not my mom. So, everything you consume has an effect on you, which is the main point I want to discuss today, whether you like it or not, right?
From your calendar, reading time starts in 1 hour.
Thank you. Thank you, Alexa. So, whether you like it or not, right? It will have an effect on you. What you consume can be food, it can be content, things you're watching on the TV, the media, and everything. So all of that has an effect on you and how you're able to proceed in life and how you're able to function in life, right? And most people underestimate how deeply um, their input, like the input that's coming in their lives through what they're consuming, can shape the outcomes of their lives, right? What comes in must come out. So if you're consuming certain things, you have to think about the outcome and output. But a lot of people are not thinking about it in that sense, and they're consuming so much negative content or so much trash content, right? Because then I understand sometimes we want to shut off, but we have to be very mindful in what we're letting inside our brains, inside our bodies, and deal with it accordingly. Because this is more about this is more than social media, right? It's information, it's thought processes, and it's point of views that people are sharing. It's culture, it's habits, leadership environments, right? So all of these things are things that we're consuming, and it's affecting the way we interact with ourselves, interact with one another, and how we deal with certain things, right? It can apply to individuals and it can apply to organizations. So like whatever topic I bring up, there's always a way to talk about it in a sense of how it affects businesses, companies, and organizations, right? So we're going to talk about the different sources of consumption people overlook every single day. And I hope this thing does not go like blink on me on Facebook. So Facebook, if you're watching live, definitely like when you're catching this live or the replay, hashtag live or hashtag replay, and let me know if you're here. If you're on Substack, feel free to comment and let me know you're here. I would love to interact with you. So for those who don't know me, my name is Stacey. I'm an operations and systems strategist. I help companies, businesses, organizations with their systems and hopefully different tools needed within that systems to improve their operations. So what that looks like, I have clients that have needed help with trainings to improve their capacity and improve their operation. So sometimes it looks like that. So if you need a way to improve your operations and you're not sure what that looks like, definitely book a consultation with me. The link for that will be in my bio, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So definitely check the link in my bio to book a consultation with me. Now, moving to the topic in terms of different types of ways you consume things. Now, I know in my notes, I have digital consumption. Like that's a very big one because a lot of people have shifted from just going to encyclopedias to digital consumption. That looks like social media, right? That looks like the news because then a lot of people are not consuming news through the newspapers already. They're getting in their news online. So news and algorithms. A lot of people don't think about that. But the algorithm of your For You page, it's controlled by you. And if you are now going out of your way to look for something different, it is the same things that are going to keep showing up on your feed. So, and your mind usually does not unsee what it sees. So you have to be meticulous in what you're consuming to ensure that you're not consuming information that's affecting your state of mind. Because your state of mind goes, goes further than what you may be thinking about, right? It can affect the way you interact. It may affect the way you view yourself and you view your company and how far you want it to go. So you have to be very careful on what you allow in your space when it comes to digital consumption. Now, I talked about algorithms, right? I read something somewhere that said that you can actually change what you see on the algorithm by making sure that you are searching for different topics and you have to be intentional about it. Because what happens is the algorithm will show you what you've been searching for. And oftentimes people don't realize your Google searches or whatever cookies your computer or your phone gathers will affect your algorithm. Because I remember that I was searching a particular topic and I ended up seeing it on my feed. So you have to be very careful on what you're consuming so it does not affect you long term. And that goes for your algorithm. Whether you like it or not, it will have a big effect on how you feel and what you're doing with your life. So digital consumption goes a long way. And social media, I made a post about it on Facebook. Like people are so busy going in a topic like so deep because then I see people that are constantly, and that's why some of these coaches are so popular right now, and they're very helpful for somebody that's at the beginning stages of a breakup or whatnot, because then the big thing right now is narcissist. And that word just makes me cringe. And whenever I'm having a conversation with friends, whenever they bring up that term, I I don't care if my ex or whomever has narcissistic tendencies because you're not a therapist. I'm not a therapist. They may have certain tendencies that are very toxic, but a lot of people are so consumed with labels on social media that they're consuming information that gets them to go into a rabbit hole without having the skills that they need to make that assumption. Because then it's the same folks that will follow the same accounts, right? And the same accounts will keep coming. And whenever they want to talk about something bothering them, it's always that same pieces of content or something that showed up on their algorithm that triggered them. So that's why you also have to be like, that's what I'm saying. You have to be careful what you consume because these things can be a trigger for you and send you down a rabbit hole. Like, I've gone down many rabbit holes, right? And I've had moments where I am not the best version of myself. But one thing I have to be mindful about is that it's temporary and I have to get myself out of it. Because if I continue to consume the information I'm consuming on social media and taking that as the truth, I'm never going to get better. So that's why I'm saying you have to really be careful of the sources of consumption and the information you're consuming in these different sources, right? So digital consumption, you have a control over that you are not admitting. So we need to take control of what you're consuming on social media or even adjust your frame of thought around some of these topics, right? This is entertaining, but that's all it is. It's entertainment. That does not make it truth or untrue. You just have to kind of like center yourself oftentimes and make choices on how you're processing some information. Okay. And I have two cameras. So if I look away, please, please, please forgive me, y'all. Now, another source of consumption, another type of consumption that I have in my nose, and that is really like very important for people to realize is emotional consumption, right? Environments that are filled with stress. You have to be very aware of the type of environment that you're in and what you're surrounding yourself in. And one thing that people don't understand, because I've had a group of friends that said, "Oh, why didn't you invite your other friend?" I have different groups of friends for some reasons. And the reason for that is because each group are different environments. I have friends that are very business minded, entrepreneur minded, but we're very tight. Like we deal with things different, right? And I have other groups of friends that are very like there to have a good time. So you need to be mindful of which environments you're in and take them with a grain of salt and realize which ones you want to put yourself in. Because I am very well aware there are some environments that are filled with stress that I do not want to keep myself in for too long. And some people that I surround myself with whenever I'm high stress, because the way they think will kind of get me out of it and say, "Stacey, get yourself out of there. You don't belong there." So you have to be very mindful of your emotional consumption and the amount of stress you're consuming based on the environments that you're in, right? So that's one example of emotional consumption I want to talk about because again, what you consume will affect how you show up and the way you're doing your work, right? And conversations that drain you. I was telling you, I've had conversations where it always reverts back to yes, this person is a narcissist, this person did this person did that. Okay, how many times are we going to beat this dead horse? Because, like, for me, I know that I have so many challenges. And the one thing about me that some of my friends know, um, I'm a recluse at heart. And it's not that I try to be a recluse, but I will internalize a lot. And I'm learning to just talk about it and then move on, right? Talk about it and move on. So sometimes you have to understand which conversations drain you and which environments suck the energy out of you where you feel more depleted when you get out of these environments than when you go in. So really think about that. And you have to think about which environments put you in constant crisis mode, where you always have to solve a problem or deal with certain things, because that's what it is. That's what that environment is, right? Where it's always a crisis. Like whenever you talk to this person, something's wrong. Okay. So really think about that. And also, this is for my business people. Organizational consumption is one thing I had in my notes. I told you there's never a topic I talk about where I don't bring business into it because sometimes you have to think about it that way. Because then it's not all like the personal affects the professional. So, organizational consumption, like think about the culture. right? Do you have systems in place to ensure that you're changing or not changing the culture, you're affecting the culture with these different systems, right? Do you have that in place to make sure that the culture is being shaped by the way the systems are implemented, right? So I want you to think about it. Like the leadership style is another type of organizational consumption. Is that person a micromanager, or is that person, because sometimes people fail to realize that it starts at the top. Because then let's say here is the mid-level management, and they have a supervisor, someone that supervises their supervisor, and oftentimes that person will only see one or two steps above. They never think about the leadership way above that. What is their leadership style? Because sometimes it can bleed into how that person is leading the team you're in. And example I have for that is that I had a supervisor, and they're like, whenever there was an issue, I would bring it up, but it always reverted back to that person always doing what they wanted to do and not really listening to feedback. So at the end of the day, did I have as much control as my team thinks I did? No, I did not. So it's managing their expectation and the expectation of my supervisor to ensure that they were doing what my supervisor did wanted. Because if I did not kind of maneuver these conversations to what leadership wanted, then it was a problem for everybody on the staff. So the organizational consumption and the leadership style goes a long way. So you really have to take some time and assess how you are leading. And if you are leading from a place of positivity, listening to your team, and also leading by example and leading in the way that fosters a culture of growth and sustainability. Okay. Now, and not like really being careful on being in an organization of this is how things are. This is how things have always been, because that's an example of a negative organizational consumption. Because when you have organizations where the leaders say that, then what they're saying is we don't have the capacity to change because we don't know how to. And we're going to make your life difficult because we don't know how to. So you need to be careful with that type of consumption of that information that you're consuming, because then it affects your personal life negatively, where you don't want to go to work. You don't like the work that you do because it is not the most positive interaction that you're having. And one thing I want you to take away from this particularly is that environment will condition your behavior. Environments will condition your behavior. You cannot out-discipline a toxic or unclear system. Because when these things start happening, what happens is that no amount of discipline will help you deal with that toxicity or that lack of clarity if you're not grounded within yourself and if you're not limiting the amount of negative consumption that you're having. And the way you deal with digital consumption is making sure you alter your algorithm or just basically um, deal with certain things accordingly, right? And the way you deal with some emotional consumption is boundaries. And organizational consumption, the same thing, boundaries in the workplace, or making sure that there is a level of clarity. If your leadership or if your leadership team, they cannot fix that, then you have to consider whether or not it's the best place for you. And a lot of people are acting on that, and some people don't. They stay in environments that are negative for them and causing them to break down. So I want you to really think about that and really think about the level of negativity you're consuming that's affecting your day to day. Okay. Now, there's also operational consumption, which is the last type of consumption that I want to talk about, where you're consuming so much, you're draining yourself because you're doing so much manual work. And I saw a post earlier by my former coach that, a few years ago, she was doing so much manual work and now automation is in place. She's going to take advantage of that. And that's what I want to challenge some companies and organizations to realize is that manual work will drain your capacity. Like, and if you're not willing to change that, give me a sec, guys. If you're not willing to change that, that's on you. Because if you want to slow down your personal progress, your company's progress, your organizational progress, that is because you're refusing to deal with the issue at hand, which is improving your systems that cause burnout in the first place. Okay. And that lack of clarity that will drain you or consume your energy, you're not fixing that. So you need to realize that these things, these operational consumption issues, will cause burnout or even drain your capacity in the long run because you're not dealing with it head on. Okay. Now, I've shared some personal examples, and I know one thing I heard last year based on how I showed up. Because one thing that I try my best not to let affect me is the information I'm consuming or things that are happening with me. I try not to let it affect how I show up in my daily life. It can affect me temporarily, but it's not going to be my forever state, right? And last year, one thing I heard a lot, like with people I shared my story with, because one thing about me, I will be very transparent with whomever I have a conversation with if we're having a heart to heart. But oftentimes people have a hard time grasping the fact that I am going through things, but I don't look like it. Because one thing I heard a lot last year was that you're going through a lot. You don't look like what you're going through. So my thought process every time I heard that is like, so what do you want me to look like? You wanted me to look broke down and like I'm going through heck and that things are not okay? Is that what you wanted me to look like? No, not on your life. Not on your life. Because again, one thing I'm saying, what you consume will affect you whether you like it or not. So the only thing you can control in this case is how you react to it and how you're dealing with it. Change what you're consuming or limit what you're consuming. And how I deal with social media, a lot of people don't realize I stopped watching the news um uh, 20 like when George Floyd, that instant, I stopped watching the news because I realized there was a lot of the media was picking and choosing, or they're sharing a lot of negativity, even though there's a lot of negative things happening. But one thing I realized is I'm sure they know how it affects people because a lot of people were very angry, rightly so, but they stayed there because they kept consuming the same thing. They didn't know how to move past that. They didn't know how to regulate themselves enough to move past what they were hearing or what they were seeing on social media or news outlets. And that is the part that I wanted to control. I wanted to control the amount of information I was receiving. So I stopped watching the news. Now I will go on their website to gather information when I want it or extract some information that I want. Sometimes there's breaking news on my feed, and that's because I follow certain pages, right? And that's okay. And if I don't want to follow some information, I exit and unfollow it. You have to control the information you're consuming and things you're consuming, or it's going to affect you. And even my social media, some people, because I remember one person, because for those who don't know, I'm Haitian. I was born and raised in Haiti and moved to the US, and I did 11th grade in high school. So I did 11th grade my senior year and went to college here. And a lot of people don't know that. And one time I was telling a friend of mine, a Haitian friend of mine, that I don't see Haitian news or content on my For You page. And there's a reason for that. I don't search for Haitian news. If I want information on what's going on in Haiti, I can go to my mom and ask her what's going on. Or I can go on the Haitian news outlet websites like Le Nouvelliste and stuff like that. I can search for that information, but I do not want it to bombard my For You page or my feed. And the reason for that is because news outlets have a tendency to provide emotional content because, like I tell most of my friends, you have to follow the money. It's usually the rage bait that are clickbaits, and they function on what will get people to stay on their page and read. And my thing is, I don't want to be baited into reading something because it's going to trigger me. And I have to be very mindful on what I consume. So I have to set rules for myself, well, boundaries for myself as to how often I'm consuming news. Okay, so this day I can go on their website or I can find out. And sometimes I don't even have to go and look for the information because then somebody's going to send it to me. Somebody's going to say, Stacey, have you seen that? They will. So be mindful of what you consume and really set clear boundaries so you're not overextending yourself and putting yourself in a situation where you are taking in more information than you can handle. Because then some folks don't know how to regulate their own nervous system as to what news they can handle, what they cannot handle. So you have to be in control of that. Okay. Now, almost time for me to go, so I got to wrap this up. So, one line I want to leave you with is you become what you consume personally and professionally. If you spend your time consuming content about relationship goals, trust me, you're going to spend your time feeling like you failed because your relationship does not look like what you see on social media. Yeah. Do you really think in this whole life, my goal is for my relationship to look great to the eye of the person? No. My goal is for me, right? I have goals for me and personal goals, like goals for how I interact with my boys, goals on what information I can provide to my boys, and success I can create for myself for my boys, and relate like things I can create for myself. I don't follow popular trends that are not things I can control. I have no control on how my relationships are going to turn out because I don't control the other party, but I control myself. So all I can do is look for information to help me improve and get a level of clarity for me because that's all I have. So I challenge you to stop looking in a lens of popularism and what the populace is thinking as to what needs to occur and start thinking about what you can control. Because that is the only thing you can do. You become what you consume personally and professionally. And this matters even more for leaders because if your thought process is, okay, like this is not looking good, like I'm going to be upset, I'm going to be sad and whatever. Like I know mental health is a huge thing and people have a lot of there's a lot of mental health issues happening in our country right now. But I implore you, if you start setting boundaries around what you're consuming, it's going to be, well, it was easier for me. It was easier for me by setting these boundaries for myself, for my own self healing. And the reason for that is I stopped letting outside external things affect internal factors. Like I'm still dealing with internal factors, yes, but I don't need the outside noise to come affect like how I deal with things. And as a leader, you need to stop letting external factors affect how you're leading. Because just because the next organization or organization that you admire is doing advocacy work. That's not your lane. Stay in your lane. Because if you don't know how to do that, why is your organization picking up the mantle doing something they don't know how to do? Ask them how you can support and do what you can, but don't go outside of your purview to do something you're not capable of doing. You don't have the capacity to do because that's what's popular at the time. And that's what people are not understanding. You have to know your own capacity and how you can contribute. Assess yourself, your personal life, your organizational life, and figure out what you have the capacity to do because that matters more than anything. Now, leaders, one thing you're going to do, you're going to shape system, but systems are also going to shape you. So you need to be very mindful of that. Be mindful of how you consume what's going on, like the crises that are happening, right? Culturally, politically, and everything. Because if you don't manage how you consume these things, they're going to affect you and your leadership. So be very mindful of that. And be mindful of the level of clarity that you have and the level of confusion this is creating. These inputs are creating because you want your outputs to be better. Okay. So whether you like it or not, this is where I help a lot of my clients through like strategic planning and operational planning because you need to have a clear idea of what you need to do and you need to have an idea of how you're going to do it. So inputs, they need to match, they need to contribute to the output. So be mindful of what you consume. I know I said I had to go at 4 o'clock because then I have a board meeting I have to get ready for. It's virtual, so I don't have much to do. But please reach out if you have any questions. And thank you so much for catching this. And again, if you're watching the replay, #replay. And I hope everybody has an amazing rest of their day. Bye, y'all.